love you, and I love raccoons, but I'm never getting a raccoon tattoo. I also love this event, and I'm so happy to be speaking here again. And I think the reason why this space is important is because it's for people where we're at a point where our job is hard. We've had to accept that we can't make everybody happy all the time. You know, that doesn't mean it feels good to be the person who disappoints them, right? So what I wanted to talk to you all about is what we need to do for ourselves when nobody, not even our manager, if we have one, knows exactly what it is that we do day in, day out. But first, let's talk about raccoons. There's this subculture on Instagram, this is why I still have Instagram, of people who have raccoons as pets. Is anybody else part of this subculture? If you have a pet raccoon, we need to be friends, so come and find me afterwards. But anyway, like, these raccoons, they live a life of utmost raccoon luxury. So there's one, Melanie, she was like riding a trike. Piper paints and sells her paintings. Can't believe no one, like my dear friend Mary, has not bought me one of these paintings as a gift. And there's another raccoon, his name is Tema. I don't really understand it because it's all in Russian, but he seems to have a lucrative career in advertising, mostly pet and cleaning products. But he did recently get his own cryptocurrency, so now I think he's maybe like another corrupt cult leader. I love raccoons, but I would never take financial advice from one. Now, compare and contrast this with the Toronto raccoon subculture. In Toronto, the local authorities have been trying to make a raccoon-proof garbage bin, and obviously they've failed because raccoons are more motivated and smarter than the average bureaucrat. But the inspiring thing about Toronto raccoons is that they thrive even in adverse conditions. They have to be more strategic, more determined, and more resilient. Now, this is not a random segue about raccoons. If it was, I would definitely show you a picture of the time I had a raccoon on my head. A great day. But it's a metaphor because we tech workers, we have been like the pampered Instagram raccoons. And now, in this market, when we're like seeing all these efficiency drives and, you know, they're going to replace us all with AI, friends, we now live in Toronto. But like I said, the raccoons in Toronto, they are thriving despite the efforts of the evil VCs, I mean bureaucrats. And I think that we can thrive too. So I want to talk to you about what we can learn from Toronto raccoons. Getting strategic, building your squad, and restoring your resilience. Now, getting strategic is defining your job and shifting it to meet the organizational need. And there's not just one strategy. There's like all these different strategies that have to fit together, right? There's your product strategy, your technical strategy, your team strategy, your you as a leader, but also as a human being strategy. Does anybody have one of those? Okay, only Mary. Now, at this point, I think we should touch on what strategy is and what it isn't. And so for this, I always turn to Richard Rumel's seminal book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. Good strategy is only good in context. This is a critical insight because often when leaders fail, it's because they try to apply a strategy that worked in one place into a new context. Like this is one of the things that Camille was talking about yesterday. So we could talk about these strategies like they're like some balanced four-legged stool, but like realistically, I think it's more like this. You know, the product strategy is the storm. The technical strategy is the half-built shelter. The team strategy is the umbrella. And the you as a human strategy, well, that is nowhere to be found. So the more dynamic the situation, the poorer your foresight will be. He's talking about timeframes. Because we often talk about strategy like it's defining the end state, like setting and describing the destination. But strategy is about defining the incremental steps that will take us to that destination. Strategy is understanding where we're at, context, and the path from there to where we need to go. We need 4 things for strategy: time, energy to think deeply about it, context to situate it, direction to identify the proximate objectives, and expertise to chart our path. And all of these need to come together to create and deliver an effective strategy. It's a balance between all of them, and we lean into different ones at different times. So in order to illustrate this, let's consider the extremes of each. Now, when somebody is all-time, we call them a political operator. You know what I mean? This is the person who manages up to get credit, but the people underneath them don't know what it is that they do. When somebody is all context, we say they can't see the forest for the trees. They miss the big picture, fixating on details. And when somebody is all proximate objectives, we call them a thought leader, and it's not a compliment. Execution is an exercise that is left to the leader. And when somebody is all expertise, they present solutions in search of problems. They don't seem to understand impact. Now, when we devalue these things, it gives us a reason not to do them. Like so many people will tell you, like so many engineers will tell you they hate politics. And like, yes, there is definitely toxic workplace politics, but also politics is just about getting things done. It's convincing people that the idea is good and that it can be executed. If you saw Nick Means talk about Eiffel's Tower at this event, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, Nick, love your talks. Now, context is important. Yes, you're delivering something bigger, but the details need to add up. You can't gloss over all of them. You need to learn how to distinguish what is important and what is not. Proximate objectives chart your path. They explain the steps you expect to take to get from where you are to where you want to be. Explaining them helps people bring people along with you. And expertise is ultimately how you deliver things. You need to understand how to deliver and how to validate. Execution is when strategy becomes real. Strategy is hard. And being seen as strategic, especially as an under-indexed person, can be even harder. You need to do all these things to develop a strategy that works, and you need to be seen as doing all of these things in order to be seen as strategic.
Hope you're enjoying this video, but did you know Lead Dev has lots more to offer?
So webinar, podcasts, I even like articles, conferences, events, and most importantly, community.
And even thinking about like process, tech, and people, which is how Lead Dev website is laid out, I really think this is the #1 learning platform for me as an engineering manager.
Don't forget to check out leaddev.com.
Product strategy is the product you're building and who you're building it for. You know, in earlier stage companies, I think this is when this is most like the storm. Does anybody resonate? Yeah. And this, you know, you might be like, this is the product manager's job, and like, yes, sure. But engineering needs to provide input because engineering also needs to understand the product strategy, because everything else is going to need to fit in with your product strategy. Your team exists for a purpose, and the clearest part of that purpose is delivery on the product strategy. Now, you need direction and alignment to identify the proximate objectives, direction where the product strategy is going, and alignment on what's most important and what's going to be delivered when. Now, your technical strategy is surfacing the underlying work that is needed to deliver on the product strategy. And you have to justify it really well, because ideally it's proactive rather than reactive. So, you know, you do it before the emergency rather than during it. And any technical strategy needs to start with what problem is being solved. A problem is not the absence of technology, unless that technology is AI, but the problems that technology solves. So like not having containers is not a problem. The number of incidents or the environment inconsistencies, that's the problem. Now, I work in 3 phases when I'm thinking through a technical strategy. And I think often when technical strategy work fails, it's because it focuses on enablement and not enough on how to get there. Like, remember, strategy is the current context and the steps to move towards the end state. If it's just about the end state, it is not strategy, it is dreaming. Now, product and technical strategy define the organizational need. Your team strategy is about how your team is going to meet that organizational need within the constraints of the business. So coming back to how we live in Toronto now, this is a big challenge. You know, we call it do more with less. Anyone heard that? Yes? Yes? Okay. And this means having fewer people, less flexibility, less margin of error. And you need to figure out how you retain key people when money is tighter and promotions are harder to come by. Now, the other 2 things I think we can learn from Toronto Raccoons are the you as a person strategy, building your squad and restoring your resilience. Oh, they have friends. When I say build your squad, you're thinking about your first team, right? And the people you lead. But I also want to talk about your inner squad, the leadership styles you apply in different situations. So building your inner squad is about expanding your leadership styles and matching them to the appropriate situations. We all have our defaults, but they're not appropriate for every situation. And the more responsibility you have, the more you need range. So this comes from Daniel Goleman's research. I have a blog post and there's a whole HBR paper. And the more we're comfortable with all 6 of these styles and we know when and how to deploy them effectively, the bigger our range is as a leader and the more different things we can take on. And this is my model of engineering management. We all need these 4 things: feedback, support, direction, practical help. And in our roles, we may not be getting these things from our managers, so we need to figure out where we're getting them from. We should also think about our directs. Are we giving them all these things, or do we need to help them get some of these needs met elsewhere? And finally, I really believe that the best thing you can do when your job gets harder is make a friend. Toronto is a hard place to be a raccoon. Don't go alone. Now, developers differentiate often through strong time management skills, right? But I think in leadership, we differentiate through energy management. When you have a large team and you can't be in all the details, you have to learn how to prioritize and what is important and what is not. You have to be ruthless. And thinking about working long after we finish for the day, especially in terms of like ruminating on things that we're stressed about, is how we work 40 hours in time and 60 in energy. If we kind of leave the computer or the office, so retro, but we don't emotionally leave our work, we end up in this state of neither working nor resting, and this is one of the things that creates resentment and burnout. Now, new managers, they often present as exhausted and overwhelmed, and the question I like to ask is like, how much are you trying to be useful? Because often, instead of managing, they're too busy trying to like prove their value by helping with things. And how can you be strategic if you're just running around after everyone else? So a couple of years ago, our recruiting team came to me and asked about succession planning, you know, the bus factor question. And I was like, it's okay, I never take the bus. So my friend, she was like, you're more likely to go to the spa and fall asleep and cook yourself. I was like, well, that might actually happen. But anyway, I kept thinking about this, and I started asking my team questions, you know, and I learned that they didn't really understand my job, and that those that did not want to do it. So one of them was up for it, and I was like, okay, what's your plan? And he had a comprehensive 2-step plan. It was 1, find out what my job was, and then 2, do all of it immediately. I was like, that's not a strategy, I've taught you nothing. So then I invented a hypothetical replacement, and I called him Dave, and I gave him a higher salary because we live in a patriarchy. And I told my directs, I went to the spa and I never came back, and now you have Dave. Dave does half as much for you, and he expects you to do twice as much for him. What do you need to survive Dave? Everybody hated Dave. That's okay. I also hate Dave. But we also realized that we had things that we could learn from Dave, that we could delegate more, be a bit less useful, that we could be more determined to carve out the time that we needed to be strategic, to think, to thrive. That being more like Dave could make us happier, but it could also make us more effective. And actually being more like Dave created space for other people to step up and learn. And it was really interesting to me because I spent months talking about delegation and scaling. But actually the thing that worked was this thought experiment that gave us this shared language and a recurrent discussion topic. I think events like LDX3, they give us some shared language and concepts that we need to be reminded of, even if we think we know them. And I called this talk, What's My Job Again? Not because I had any intention of telling you, #sorry, not sorry, but because I think it's a question we need to be continually asking ourselves so that we can thrive. And for when you need more granular questions, think like a Toronto raccoon. What's my strategy? Where's my squad? And do I need to prioritize my own resilience? My name's Cate. I'm on the internet and in bookstores. Thank you.